But welcome everyone to this online hybrid in-person presentation from the U.S. Embassy on grants writing and this coming statement of interest for annual program statement and American Spaces Notice of Funding Opportunity. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Anna Maria Carls. I'm one of the Deputy Public Affairs Officers here at the U.S. Embassy. I'm currently sitting in our American Center here at the Embassy. I'm joined today virtually with a couple of my colleagues who are in person. One is my colleague Paul, who is currently at the American Corner at CBU with some in-person members. And then also my colleagues Austin and Justin, who are at the American Corner at NEPA. So thank you all for coming today. I'll be doing primarily the presentation today, and between myself and my colleagues, we'll be answering your questions. So this afternoon, it'll be a kind of a brief overview of what these notice of funding opportunities look like, what are U.S. government grants, and just some tips on writing a grant proposal. So thanks for joining today, everyone who's virtually and in person. While much of the information on these specific grants will be only for the 2022 notice of funding opportunities, the information on what is a good grant application will be applicable for any U.S. government grant that you may apply for. But first of all, we hope we'll find this session useful and everything. So we'll get started. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. There we go. All right, first off, what is a U.S. government grant? Primarily, it is for nonprofit and non-governmental organizations to apply for funding for funding for a small grant. Individuals may apply, but organizations are more strongly encouraged so that they have a track record of what kind of programs that they've implemented. There are also applications that are not eligible, programs that deal with partisan political activities, fundraising, profit generating, programs to support specific religious activities, construction, and programs intended primarily for the growth or development of the organization. So there's a few more listed if you look in the notice of funding opportunity, but just wanted to highlight some that we often get questions about. And I think one of the big things to highlight is that organizations and particularly companies that are for profit cannot apply for a U.S. government grant. It is not meant for profit making. So businesses, not for businesses, for seed funding. Make sure you're eligible to apply for the grant before you put in all the hard work for a grant. Additionally, as I mentioned, this is only for two parts of our grants within the public affairs section here at the U.S. Embassy. There are also several grants programs from the U.S. Embassy, the PEPFAR Small Grants Program, and the Ambassador's Special Self-Help Grant. Make sure to watch out on grants.gov and then the U.S. Embassy website for when these applications are live. While the next couple of slides are specific to this grant cycle within the public affairs section, later on the presentation is what makes a good grant will be applicable no matter what U.S. government grant you apply for. All right, so going into the specifics of what two public affairs grants applications that are open, we currently have two of them. We have one that is the public affairs section annual program statement and the American Spaces Notice of Funding Opportunity. I'll do a general overview of both of them, but my colleague Paul, who is currently at CBU, is the American Spaces coordinator, so I can let him hop in for a little bit if he wants to add in anything else on the American Spaces NOFO. On the annual program statement side, it is for proposals again from nonprofit and non-governmental organizations for projects that support core U.S. government priorities in Zambia. For the U.S. government, this includes promoting democracy and good governance, building inclusive economic prosperity, strengthening health systems, and advancing peace and security. So these grant applications should focus on these priorities that we have here in Zambia. And for the annual program statement, these programs can be done anywhere within Zambia. So it can be done Lusaka, Copperbelt, Solwezi, Livingston, Chapata, anywhere in between. So this grant does not have a location specificity other than inside the country of Zambia. The minimum of the program of this grant is $5,000, and the grant application can be up to $25,000. On the American Spaces side, I'll just do a quick general overview. These proposals are for programs at one of our 3 cultural centers to strengthen ties and build relationships between the US and Zambia through activities that highlight shared values, goals, and cooperation. The 3 cultural centers are currently represented on the Zoom call today. I'm currently in the American Center in Lusaka at the US Embassy. We have one of our American corners at NEPA and our American corner at CBU. So for this program, for this grant, the activities will have to take place in one of these 3 areas, one of these 3 spaces. The priority areas for this grant is science and technology, particularly makerspace programs, democracy and political participation, entrepreneurship and small business development, and engagement with US government exchange program alumni. And for this grant, it is a minimum of $1,000 and up to $8,000. But one thing I want to highlight is that while we do have this maximum, if you don't need that maximum amount of money, make sure your budget proposal is equivalent to what you believe your program needs to be successful. You don't have to get up to the maximum if you don't need it to have a successful program. It can be below the maximum, but above the minimum. So just wanted to highlight that. On the bottom left-hand corner, we have the URL to the US Embassy page with the small grants. Paul, did you want to hop in for anything on the American Spaces NOFO?
Sure. Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. I'll make it so I can see myself so I see. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone here in CBU. Yeah, so the American Spaces grant, I mean, if you're looking at the 2 grants, kind of differentiating would be the public affairs grant is more community-based, so out in the community around Zambia, and American Spaces is specific to the corners. And they do have slightly different priorities, but I would say there's a lot of overlap because they're basically both focused on the US Embassy mission and priorities, as Ana Maria detailed. In the American corners, we do a lot of science and technology makerspace. That's a really big area that we're trying to boost and increase. So that's something we'd love to see more proposals. We've done a lot of great entrepreneurship programs, and we also want to build on the democracy and governance, the big surge after last year's elections. Same with the public affairs grants. I know that's a big priority area as well. But if you look through the NOFOs, which is basically the notice of funding opportunity on our website, you'll see a lot of other program areas. So we also do lots of programs in the arts. We do a lot of programs in education, programs for populations with disabilities, women empowerment programs. So we have a lot of different areas that we would love to do programs on. And so please look at the wide range, just knowing that the ones up here on the screen are kind of our biggest priorities at the current moment, just where we see the partnership between US and Zambia as some of the key areas where we'd like to strengthen those partnerships. So yeah, we would love, the reason the American corner ones are a bit smaller is they're a little bit smaller in scope, right? They're just here at the space, whereas the community base may be a little bit larger and may require more funding. But just to echo Ana Maria's point, definitely, be reasonable in your costs. Sometimes people, I'm sure we'll get to this when we get to the tips section, but I know sometimes people, say I'm going to cover 5 or 6 provinces and reach 5,000 people just to kind of try to fill up the funding, when maybe that's not really a reasonable goal for the organization, that they can reach that many people. We'd love to see things that are more targeted and reasonable than just trying to prove you can reach the most numbers of people. That's not really our priority. We would rather have a greater impact than numbers. Yeah. All right, back to you, Ana Maria.
Thank you, Paul. Move on to the next slide. Oh, let's see. There we go. Now we're getting in a little bit more into the specifics of this year's notice of funding opportunities. So for both of these programs, both of these grant notice of funding opportunities, we're doing a new to Zambia, new to us, two-step program called a statement of interest. So we're hoping that this will help. Let me go back. So part of this two-step process is, for the first step is doing more of just a project proposal kind of overview on what do you want to do, why do you want to do it, roughly how much will it cost. I believe in the NOFO it has to be no more than 4 pages. So the point of this first deadline, which is due April 15th, we'll go through it next, is it's to kind of get straight to the point, learn more about the program, and figure out what it is that that your organization wants to do. So we're hoping that this will help both help you, the applicants, as you don't have to spend all that time with all that bureaucratic paperwork that is required for grants. This time it'll be in that second round for those that are invited. But for this part, just a short and sweet 4-page program proposal to learn more about the organization, the program, its goals, objectives, and a little bit about the budget. So specifically for the statement of interest, it needs to cover the following points, and this is all outlined. This is straight from the NOFO. So we want to learn more about your project idea. We just talked about the program priority areas. We want to make sure that it meets one of those, that is an original and impactful idea, the potential to how it's going to reach its key audiences. I think we'll get to this a little bit in the tips, but we don't want to see that, oh, I'm just going to reach the youth. We want to say reach, for example, maybe like youth age 18 to 20 in this specific city. Want to make sure that you're specific and reasonable in that. Another aspect is with all these grants, there has to be a strong American component. For the project plan, it needs to be realistic and feasible. As Paul mentioned, saying reaching 5,000 people with a specific budget, that may not be realistic. So we want to make sure that your program proposal has been thought through and that you have the abilities to do it. Also having a logical implementation plan supported by the activities along a reasonable timeline, and to also have measurable results. And then it also aligns with the proposed budget estimates and allocations. For your program, for example, we may not want to see where a significant portion of your program goes to giving notebooks to participants. We want to see the budget being allocated to the actual program activities. And lastly, the ability to achieve objectives, and with that, the institutional capacity of the organization. That you have demonstrated that the organization has the experience and the capacity to carry out the specific project, and that the institution offers added value with relationships with partners and the particular expertise and knowledge within your specific program proposal. So this is outlined in the NOFO, so you can go back and look at that a little bit more closely in the NOFO. Off to the next slide. So here is a bit of the timeline with this two-step process. As I mentioned, we're doing the statement of interest process for both the annual program statement and the American Spaces NOFO. They will follow the same calendar. So if you're applying for one or for both of them, the timeline will look the same. For annual program statements, you can submit them to Lusaka Past Grants at state.gov or American Spaces NOFO to AmSpaces Zambia at state.gov. One moment. Thank you all. Talking a little too much. So the first deadline of interest will be the first 4-pager statement of interest is due April 15th. Then here at the embassy, we'll do that first review between April 15th and May 5th. And we'll notify those that make it to the next round should receive a notification on or around May 6th. At that time, you'll get the instructions on how to fill out all of the Department of State documents that can sometimes be a bit much and cumbersome. So that's why we're trying to do this process. Once you receive that notification to the next round, those documents will be due. That full grant application will be due June 10th. We'll review those and have notifications to the selected proposals received on or around July 1st. And because of money situation and sending out the money, programs should be beginning by September 1st. So that's just the overview of what this timeline over the next year or the next few months will look like for this grant proposal session. So go to the next slide. So here we wanted to cover kind of a broader approach of when we read our grants proposals on this side, what would we like to see? So we have a few clouds here that I'll go through. So first I'll start to being specific and succinct. So we want to make sure that in your proposal that you've thought it through, that you're being specific on, for example, who your audience is, what type of programs you will be doing, who will be involved, what is your timeline. While it's important to be specific, we also, there is a page limit. So we want to make sure that you're able to illustrate these important aspects in a short, succinct manner in these proposals. So in a way, get straight to the point, but also tie it into within a few sentences or so into the broader picture on what is important with your grant proposal. With that, want to make sure that you're being realistic in your grant proposal. I think we've seen ones trying to, let's see, what are some? We don't want to be seeing ones that are trying to solve world hunger, for example, that everyone all around the world has been trying to work on that for many, many years. That's not something that will happen within a year-long grants program. So I know that's an extreme example, but it kind of gets to the point. We want to make sure that these proposals are realistic with the capacity of the organization, with the funding, with the location. Want to make sure that these proposals are achievable within the time frame. Also, we want to make sure that these grant proposals focus on the program. It's good to have the context and the background on why that specific proposal is important, why that issue is important, but we want 80%, 90, I would actually say 90% of the proposal to focus on the program itself. We need a little bit of background is good and why it's important, but we want to know, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? And how are you going to do it? So go up for targeted approach. I think for this is just making sure you have a specific plan of if you want to help increase literacy rates, who are you going to reach? How are you going to reach it? And what are your methods? I guess that's also how. But want to make sure that you're being specific on how you're going to approach that. I know this one may be simple, but grammar and spelling is extremely important when reading these proposals, and we receive many, so we read through all of them. It looks better as an organization, and it helps us read it faster if we understand what you are saying with grammar and spelling. Just make sure you proofread, have a friend proofread your proposal before you submit it. Another one, easy to understand, that we may not work in the specific field that you do, but we can still understand what your project is and why it is important and how you're going to do it. You can practice it with having a friend who's not in your field or a family member not in your field read and understand your proposal. That's one way to make sure that you're able to get your point across. Excuse me. Another aspect is, as required by the NOFO, there has to be a U.S. component. I think there's some examples in the NOFO, but that can be including alumni who have gone on exchange programs, and bringing in a U.S. speaker, either virtually or in person. There just needs to be some sort of U.S. component. So make sure you have that very clearly described in your proposal. Another aspect is making sure you have a plan for your monitoring and evaluation, that as the US Embassy, we're providing funds, but we also, there needs to be a plan on how to monitor how these funds had an impact in the community, and making sure that you have a plan on how to see that, how you can monitor the program throughout and figure out what worked, what didn't, how did it impact the community. So make sure you have a thought out plan in that way. And as we mentioned earlier, having a reasonable and focused budget, making sure that your budget and your programming and your budget are equivalent. As I mentioned, not having 20% of your budget be notebooks, or for example, or just need to be program focused in your budget. And lastly, having clear and reasonable objectives. We'll look at an example in a moment, but making sure you say who, what, where, why, even in your objectives throughout your proposals, kind of hit on those topics. Just take a moment for another drink of water. All right, next, we have a good example of a grant proposal, and an example that needs a little bit of improvement. So this one, as you can read, it has specific women's participation in the cash crop value chain, and looking at them engaging in agricultural products, but they're even focusing in it even more on one specific product, one specific crop, on the tomatoes. Here, if you're looking at the types of activities, you're looking at role modeling activities in schools and colleges and universities, workshops and trainings of smallholder farmers, mentorship programs to support women, training women in scientific and professional skills, such as, I think that such as is very helpful because you can give specific examples on what you would like to do. And here then training youth in agricultural skills, such as poultry farming. So this is just one aspect, one part of one of the grants proposals that we've received in the past that gets a little bit more specific on what they're gonna do and narrowing it down even to the specific type of crop that they're gonna be focused on. So here is an example of a grant that needs a little bit of improvement. So here it's necessity of the project to educate people in the community. Well, educate people on what? What people? Is it all people, the youth, women, men, someone in a specific field, and in the community? What community? Is that a location, a specific school? It's just, it needs a little bit more specificity. And create employment for people. Well, what kind of employment? How are you going to do it? And what people? Create awareness of what and how. Again, and to what people. So I think it's the more you can be specific in these kind of objectives and throughout your proposal, the better. And here's a little bit of the objectives: provide long-term and short-term feeding program. Of what, to whom, where, and to teach and train youth and women in various skills. Here would be good, such as X, Y, and Z. And you can put it, teach and train youth and women in X city in various skills, such as X, Y, and Z. And again, provide long-term and short-term civic leadership trainings to group X on X, Y, and Z. So I think here you can see a little bit more that it needs a little bit more work on being specific on each of these different aspects. Right, and I think that is our overview here. And I'll stop there and happy to open it up to questions. I know Paul has been monitoring the chat, so I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but yeah, all three of us, all three of the locations will be answering the questions. I don't know if we want to go from Copperbelt to NEPA, somewhere online.
Yeah, why don't we give some turns to the different groups? So yeah, I guess I'll start since I'm unmuted. Is there anyone here in our audience here at CVU that has a question that they'd like to, feel free to raise your hand. And would you like to come up? So that, yeah, just so that people can see you. Can you turn off the screen, actually, your shared screen, Anna Maria, so we can see the people a little better? There we go. All right. Sure, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, I don't think I was fully clear on the US components aspect where you said it just has to involve somebody. So what did you mean by US components exactly?
That's a good question. Yeah, and that came up in the chat as well. So do we have any examples, either Anna Maria or our folks, Wycliffe and Austin at NEPA, any examples of what we mean by US component?
I guess I'll hand it over to Austin since he has been here and at the embassy a little bit longer. But from what I've seen in the application so far, while Austin comes up to the camera and computer, like I said, working with alumni in the NOFO, we have it written down as describe the American content and how the project will promote a better understanding of the U.S. and/or build relationships with Americans. So I think also just that knowledge and information sharing. I guess, Austin, are you able to come up to the computer? I'm not, Wycliffe, do you have anything? Okay. All right, over to Austin.
Hello. So when it comes to, I think the US component, it could be indeed, as Anna Maria said, are you partnering with alumni, using some of the, maybe the Yali network courses to devise some of your strategies? What US ideals, for example, are you going to employ in your project? These are different ideals, whether it's promoting of human rights or press freedom and all of those kinds of ideals. Are you increasing participation of persons with disabilities? Are you engaging with speakers from the US or partnering with some of the US to conduct the activity? Are you using material from the, maybe some of the material from a US, from an American author to do certain things? So I think it's also good to understand absolutely what we're looking for in these proposals, and to understand what the goals are, the mission goals of the US mission here in Zambia. So that's a good starting point to see what kind of collaborations or what kind of resources you can employ. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really good what Austin and Anna Maria said. I think, as Austin was saying, it doesn't always have to be literally like an American coming to speak at your program. The US component can encompass the US mission in Zambia, like what are some of our key ideals, discussing, we had a poetry discussion at the American Spaces a few weeks ago where they basically engaged with the poetry of an American author, an American poet, and debated and discussed how those themes related to some of the themes that were happening in Zambia as well. So there's a lot of different ways to consider that. It doesn't have to be that you literally have to find an American and bring them into your workshop or something like that. And it should be natural as well. Like, sometimes we don't want it to be something forced. It should be something that really supports and contributes to your program and the exchange between the US and Zambia, ideas between the US and Zambia, not something that you just tacked on at the end to meet the requirement.
So is it possible to use somebody closer to home that is
Yeah. The question is if they can use me as their American component. I mean, certainly, there are speakers in the community, both at the embassy and other places, that may sometimes, have an interest. There's a big American community, not just the U.S. embassy. So there may be people here in Zambia that may, or alumni that have spent time in the U.S. that can speak to the U.S. experience people that have been part of our exchange programs in the past, like Mandela Washington Fellows and that sort of thing, as well as Zambians that have studied in the US. So we have a lot of Zambians that went to university in the US that may be able to have connections with those universities or organizations in the US that can support that. So yeah, there are a lot of people in Zambia that have those kinds of connections, including myself. But I'm not volunteering for every program. Do we want to take a question from Nipa?
Anyone with a question? Please come forward. You can state your name also, and then just present your question. Go ahead, yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Dixon. My question is, can somebody access a grant if it's being hosted by the Rotary Club? If yes, how do you go about the proposal?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, my question is, can somebody access a grant if your project is being hosted by the Rotary Club? If yes, how do you go about the proposal?
Yeah, so I think the question is, can you access a grant if you are hosted by the Rotary Club? So my direct reaction to that, if I may, is who's the grantee? Is it the Rotary Club that is applying for the grant? Or what is your affiliation with the Rotary Club?
Yeah, in the instance where you are not yet registered, you don't have a certificate, then the Rotary Club does the monitoring of the project. Like they are affiliated. I, the person, like if, for instance, I have the water project or if it's a school project, then I go and affiliate with Rotary Club for easy monitoring, since I don't have the certificate.
Okay, so I think that among the requirements for you to apply is you need to be a registered organization here in Zambia, one, and then two, also as an individual, you should probably also affiliate with an organization that is registered here in Zambia. I don't know whether the Rotary Club then would be, if you apply, you have to be responsible for implementing those activities. If there are certain aspects of the grant that you can't implement, then that has to be clear in your proposal. So there's what we call sub-granting. So if a grantee is capable of doing A, B, C, and D, but they're going to sub-grant someone to do some other activity that they can't do, then that would have to be, to be clear in the proposal. So it's possible, but we'd want to see, the registration of the Rotary Club. Is it a locally registered institution here in Zambia? And then you'd have to, provide specifics to some of those, your affiliation. Because what we don't want to do also is to piggyback on what others are doing. So if the Rotary Club is doing activities in schools, maybe they're doing activities in 4 schools, and then you do a grant to do activity in the one school, and then the activities are pretty much mirrored or pretty much the same. We don't want to have a situation where you are what you call double dipping. You are using the activities of the Rotary Club, and then having a smaller portion of that, and then claiming the whole activity as your own, or claiming partial the partial activity as your own, because then it becomes tricky to do the reporting on some of those activities. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Austin. We'll try to take a question from the Zoom. We'll see, sometimes unmuting folks can be a bit tricky, but I see Susanna has her hand up. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and see if you can ask your question.
Thank you. I would like to ask, is this only for legally registered organizations? And also, can an individual be directly involved in more than one project that has been tendered in?
Yeah, I'll add, thanks, Susanna. On the registered organization question, they do have to be registered not-for-profit organizations. I think it can be registered here in Zambia or another location, but they do have to be a registered organization. And then for other individuals being directly involved in two projects, I'll let Austin or Paul kind of give their point of view, but I think one thing to think about if you're putting into two projects, one of the things that we do look at is capacity. So if you have the capacity to making sure that you have the capacity to be involved in those two projects. So that's just another aspect to think about if you want to apply for two different projects. But I'll let Paul or Austin hop in on that one.
Hello. Yeah. So I think that's, nothing stops you from applying for more than one grant. I think it's also an issue of, indeed issues of capacity and what you're trying to achieve in your proposal.
Should we take another question?
Yeah, let's take one here, I guess. Couldn't tell. I thought there was someone in the chat, but then they lowered their hand. So anyone here? Yeah.
My name is Richard. I would like to find out, let's assume that you apply for a grant and it doesn't go through. Is that the end? Or can you still apply later on?
It's applying once does not negate you from applying again in the future. So definitely encourage you, whether or not you've been successful, to apply again the following year. Also look at the grants NOFOs on our website from other parts of the U.S. Embassy. There are grants applications that are open throughout the year. So yeah, keep an eye out on there, keep trying for it. But I'd also recommend, if you were unsuccessful, to take a look at your grants application with a keen eye, and maybe have a couple of friends who are in the field to look at it and figure out what can you learn from it, what can you change, what can you further expand upon or be more specific about. So even if you were unsuccessful, use it also as a learning opportunity of how you can make next year's application or the next grant application even better.
Yeah, I would say we have examples from all of our programs of applicants who have applied multiple times. Whether it's just they've usually improved something about their application, kind of both from our grants, our exchange programs like Mandela Washington Fellowship or Education USA. We've had a lot of cases of people reapply with kind of a different angle and a different kind of improved application and get accepted. So yeah, no problem. I see there's another hand raised. I'll go to Nipa in a second. Tauna on the Zoom, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I have a question. So as we develop our statement of interest, will there be someone or a contact that will help us for questions that may arise in the process?
Yeah, I would say for any questions throughout the process, you can email the two emails for the specific grant, Lusaka Pass Grants at state.gov. And let me grab the other one before I say it wrong. AM spaces Zambia at state.gov for any questions. We'll do the best that we can to answer. One thing we do, we have this presentation, but we also have to toe the line of providing information, but also not coaching. But we'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have at those emails. So should we go to NEPA for the next question?
We have some questions here. Yes, the gentleman at the back. Maybe we can get two or three at a time, because I think there's quite a number of questions. So the gentleman there, the lady in the brown.
Yes, Austin, you can have two. We'll give you two.
Two?
Okay,
Sure,
thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Nathan Chieji. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for this very informative presentation that you actually made. Really, many people out there have actually impactful ideas that lack funding. But my question is, like, a person like me came across this on the last minute, and I'm wondering, if I was to formalize a company like today after hearing this particular formation, do I still qualify to actually apply for this grant? And does the same company that I register, maybe as a limited company or whatever it is, can I also apply more than 5 or 6 or 10 impactful ideas I submitted?
So my name's Natasha Msonda. My question is, on the American Space Notice Opportunity, you say entrepreneurs and small business developer, but at the beginning, you said it shouldn't be profit making, and it should, it should support the American people. So as an entrepreneur who is applying for a small business loan, which ranges from 10,000 to 8,000 US dollars, like, how do you incorporate that?
Hey, Paul?
I'll answer that second question, and then we can come back to the first question. Yeah, can you hear me?
That's okay, go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, so the second question about entrepreneurship. So the intention of our entrepreneur program, okay, sorry, I think we just have a delay, but the intention of our entrepreneurship programs is to help build capacity of entrepreneurs, to learn skills and strategies to improve their entrepreneurship, enterprises, things like how to write a business pitch or how to network and how to create opportunities. But we don't provide funding for starting a business. So we don't provide like seed funding or funding towards, setting up a business or profit activities for an entrepreneur. So that's the difference. It's not to say that, we do want entrepreneurship programs, but the funding is not for an entrepreneur project where you're actually asking for funding for the starting of a business. So it's for capacity building and skills building for entrepreneurs. And I'll let someone else answer the first questions.
There we go. Austin, do you want to tackle the first question?
Okay, that's fine. The question was about registering an organization now and applying for the grant proposal and applying for a grant opportunity. So at the time of applying for the grant, you should be a registered organization. So the fact that the NOFO is open between now and April 16th, I think, for the annual program statement, you are certainly welcome to register an organization, which should not be, it should be a not-for-profit organization. So it should be, you know, it should be a non-profit organization. And then you are certainly welcome to register, as long as you register and apply before the deadline.
All right, I think should we grab just a few more questions? I know. Oh,
Next round of questions.
yeah, but thank you. I have colleagues sitting here with me, and so they reminded me that there was another part to that question, but to the first one, that you can present multiple ideas, multiple grant proposals at the same time. I think, as I mentioned before, just as we're reading it too, we're also thinking about the capacity of the individual or the organization. So just keep that in mind, especially if you are doing multiple grant proposals, that you would have the capacity to be involved in the multiples of them if all are accepted. So just wanted to make sure to add that. I'll grab two questions from online. Mr. Wayne and Taonga from Modzi Arts. We'll start with Mr. Wayne and then we'll go to Taonga.
Okay, good afternoon. So my question is actually just, I'm just asking, is it possible if you can share the presentation slide so that we can a summary of what we are supposed to be doing in terms of grant application?
Yeah, I think we'll for sure be posting a recording of the Zoom online. I think we can find a way to also share the slides as well. But also want to reiterate that I would say 80–90% of what we're talking about is in the NOFOs online. So make sure to read those with a keen eye as well. But I think we'll for sure be posting a recording of this, but we'll also find a way to post it on our website, the slides themselves. So good question.
All right, thanks.
Yep, thank you. And Taonga?
Mulibwanji, thank you for the presentation. I just had one question that will fall through from the, I think it's relating to the promoting entrepreneurs and small businesses, and then also goes to relate with point 2 under promoting economic opportunities and democratic participation through film and or arts. I wanted to have to ask a question if this can relate towards a subscription, paying a subscription within a US company that promotes arts, something like an online art market.
So it'd be part of the grant would be to be on an online system?
Yeah, exactly.
Would that, I guess, would that be showcasing what you've done in the program?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think it's more or less promoting Zambian artists in a whole, and then having a subscription on an online website in the US. So not necessarily producing work, but rather collectively working on this online platform for several.
Yeah. I don't know the exact answer off the top of my head, but if you can email us at lusaka-passgrants@state.gov. I don't know if Austin has an idea, but I think for sure for focusing on the budget and what money is getting spent, it should be focused on the program, the capacity building, those kinds of things. But we can get back to you. Austin, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think just to add, I think that the the primary target audience should be a Zambian, should be whether it's the Zambian entrepreneur, the filmmaker, or the artist. So that should be your target audience. The grants programs are not aimed at, really promoting Zambia to the US. They are about empowering Zambians here, so the recipients are local Zambians. So if there's that, I mean, if that is a component of the grant, then we would be happy to look at that and see how that would play out. Because I think also when it comes to these grants, we are not looking to be paying recurring costs. So you'd have to also, determine within your budget for how long would you be, subscribing to these platforms, and then also really outlining who the beneficiaries are for that. So it should not be for your organization, for example, if Mozi Arts is looking to expand, the small grants program is not for that kind of activity or for that kind of purpose. So you would have to look at how you are empowering, local audiences.
Yes, I think we're closing up near to an hour, so I think maybe let's grab one question from each location. Again, if you have any specific questions, I guess first make sure to read both of the NOFOs. There's a lot of information there. But if you have any other questions after that, feel free to email and we'll do our best to answer. Since Austin, you're right there, and if there's someone else at NEPA who has another question, I guess feel free to come on up and ask.
Yes, please come through.
Thank you so much. My name is Yusun Timbo, and I'm an advocate for Global Schools Program. That's an initiative under United Nations Sustainable Development Solution Network. And the school where I come from, I happen to be a teacher. The school where I come from is a girls' school, meaning that it is a global school. Therefore, my question is, my school, the environmental club at that particular school, as well as myself, do we qualify for a grant so that we advance sensitization of sustainable development goals through education for sustainable development? And the schools we can say around Saka district, and we see how we can roll over to other parts of the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll go off that. We have three eligibility kind of populations: the registered not-for-profit organizations, and this can include think tanks, civil society, non-governmental organizations with programming experience, individuals, and non-profit or governmental education institutions. So if I understood through the Ethernet and through the virtual world, it sounds as if your organization is a non-governmental, nonprofit, or a governmental educational institution, you might be able to apply. Austin, since you were right there, do you have anything else to add or correct me if I was wrong?
Yes, you're certainly right. I think that public institutions are welcome to apply. So public schools can apply, private schools cannot. I think as you address the MDGs within the notice of funding opportunity, there are a lot of things I think that talk about MG and SDGs, correct? So whether it's issues to do with environment, women and girls empowerment, etc., we have those are some of the certainly the areas that you'd want to, you're welcome to apply.
Thanks. Paul, do you have any another question at CBU?
Yeah, we do. I turned off our video, sorry, because we were having a little bit of bandwidth problems, but you should be able to hear us.
Yep, we can hear you.
How do you keep people accountable of the grant once it's been given? And what measures and follow-ups have you put in place in ensuring that the grant is used for its intended purpose? Because it's one thing that would apply for one, but it's also another thing if we actually use the money for it. So what measures have you ensured that you put in place that as the grantees have made sure that it's for its intended purpose?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I can give a general overview, then I'll hand it over to Austin. But as part of agreeing to be a grantee, you sign a terms and conditions, and part of the expectation as a grantee is to provide, I believe it's quarterly reports on what the progress is, how it's going, how you've been using your budget. We'll also do some site visits to make sure that, as you said, making sure that the money is being used properly and what it was applied for. And that's also, as I mentioned before, monitoring and evaluation is an important aspect of the proposal. And that's where at the end of the grant, you have to submit a large kind of wrap up grant evaluation. And that's where we'll also see us here at the U.S. Embassy, how you use that money, and if you use it well, effectively, and you used it properly. So there's a reporting requirement as a grantee to us to make sure that that money is being used properly. Austin, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I think we do, where possible, conduct site visits or request to participate in some of the sort of the milestone events of the grant. So is it the project launch? Is it midway through the project? Or is it a time when you're providing certification if you are doing a training program, for example, and people have completed? So we do have check-in mechanisms with you. If we can't come to you in person, we're able to call and just do what we call desk monitoring. And then we also like to highlight these grants on social media and other platforms. So we will ask for photos of you in action. So those are some of the ways that we are able to do our monitoring.
Thanks, Austin. And we'll grab these final two questions online. I know we're hitting about the hour mark from when we started. So first, Javon and then David, if you can both ask your questions, and then we'll wrap it up with those two. Javon first.
Thank you. All right, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, my question is, when you are given the grant and then the project starts, is there any business support that you provide in order to ensure that the project succeeds?
I think I'll start. I think that's part of, but in your grants application, we have to see that you have the capacity as an organization, the know-how, just the manpower to be able to be successful in the grant. But also it's best as a grantee to have open communication with us. We've selected grants that we believe have the capacity, the know-how, and the knowledge to be able to be successful. So we're able to be part of the grant, but we do provide the money to let the grantee kind of run their program as they directed in their proposal. So I think, Austin, Paul, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. We really rely on the grantee to really shepherd this work. We will provide, if they come, like during these COVID times, I think there are times where people can't conduct activities as they wanted to because they can't gather anymore with the other issues that prevent them from completing the grant. Then we are available to be consulted, and then we can see how else we can be helpful.
All right, I know we have a couple other hands up, but I'm cognizant of everyone's time. So we'll just end with David's question, but Susanna, and then it says on Zoom, Youth Empowerment for Development. Please feel free to email us. I know you're on Zoom, but also for those in person, you can chat with Paul or Austin as you make your way out of the room. But again, for those that are here online, please feel free to just email with any questions at lusaka.passgrants.state.gov. It's where you'll also submit your grant application. So I know I see your hands. We could probably be here for another hour with all the questions, but just cognizant of time. So, but last but not least, David, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out about, I have one of the examples of the program that we want to do is to enhance Zambian literacy through arts and filmmaking. So I wanted to find out how the exchange program can kick in.
You mean like including an alumni from a US Zambia exchange program or creating an exchange program?
Yes. Creating an exchange program where maybe we can have a few people that can learn about art and filmmaking, and then we can come back and empower people. I just wanted to find out.
Yeah, I'll hand that one over to Austin. I have not seen a proposal yet like that. Austin, do you mind taking this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that creating an exchange program is possible, especially if it's going to be virtual. Because remember that these grants, for example, the annual program statement is only up to a maximum of $25,000 US. So the large chunk of that money, of course, cannot go towards flights to the United States to meet with US counterparts. So you need to find ways of conducting virtual exchanges. You know, I think that's probably more feasible and probably more cost effective. There are organizations that you can, the US has a lot of many arts organizations. So you can do some research and find out who is available to partner virtually. And then that will probably be the way to go. With regards to, remember that these grants are very competitive and we are custodians of US taxpayers' monies. So wherever we see excesses, especially where finances are involved or where we feel that, it's possible that things can be done in a more efficient way, then we'll suggest that, but nothing stops you from pursuing that opportunity. But be mindful that, we are looking at efficiency and impact. That's all.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Austin. And as I mentioned, I know we could probably go on for
Thanks.
quite a while.
Hey, Anna Maria, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Now I can't hear you. You're still on?
Can you hear me, Anna Maria?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I think we have a delay, so I think we're talking over each other. But I just wanted to add one thing about the American Spaces grant that I just was thinking about. In addition to the grant activities that maybe for a specific workshop idea or like a set workshop, American Spaces, within its name, Spaces, we're definitely looking for projects that can help to build the capacity of the American Spaces to foster some of these communities. Like I know a few of the questions were about art communities, like filmmaking and things like that. So currently we have one grantee that's kind of building a community of creative entrepreneurs and having kind of regular meetups at the space. So I just wanted to mention that we are also accepting proposals. Doesn't necessarily have to be for a closed, 6-week workshop. I mean, it still has to fit within the year long limit of the grant, but it could be for kind of building up our makerspace programs or building up our art programs to kind of create those spaces for folks. You still need to be specific in the grant about the kind of activities that you want to propose for that, but it can also be kind of about sort of helping to build the capacity of the American Corners to support different communities like art communities or technology communities and things like that. That was just my thing I wanted to add about American Spaces grants. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. And thanks, Austin, and thank you everyone for attending in person or virtually or watching the recording now. We definitely hope that this has been helpful. As I mentioned, please feel free to email with any questions, and we look forward to reading your grant proposals, those that are at the American Corners. I know we have Paul and Austin and Justin there to be able to help answer questions after the event. So please feel free if you have any questions to stop by and talk to them on your way out. But yeah, thank you all for being here and hope that you found this helpful, and we look forward to reading your grant proposals. So have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Anna Maria. Thanks, everybody.